You know, I've been through some chaotic situations. A few overseas deployments will do that to you, but nothing quite prepared me for the sheer, sudden violence of that afternoon. It was the annual Vance family reunion, held right there at the old lodge near Swift Creek, Wyoming. The air was thick with the smell of pine needles, barbecue smoke, and the kind of easy laughter you only get when cousins who haven't seen each other in a year finally gather. I was standing by the grill, spatula in hand, trying to keep Cousin Gary from incinerating the brisket. But mostly, I was watching my son, Sam. Sam is 8, and he's one of those kids who documents the world. He had his perpetually open notebook right there, sketching everything from the make and model of Uncle Dave's beat-up pickup to the exact location of the mustard jar. He inherited that careful attention to detail from me, I guess, but thankfully, he directs it toward art and observation, not triage. I'm Ethan Vance, 36, former Army medic, now just a guy who fixes farm equipment and tries to be a good single dad. My hands, they tell the whole story. The scars are a mix of combat medicine and mechanical repair. 3 years ago, I lost my sister, Clara. The official cause was respiratory failure, but I knew better. I knew it was those damn prescription painkillers, the ones she got through the local pharmacy, the ones that came from somewhere dark, somewhere connected to corporate greed. But without proof, without resources, that case went absolutely nowhere. It just became a cold, heavy lump in my gut that I carried every day around me. The family was bustling. My cousin George, the good one, was manning the drink cooler, his laugh carrying over the entire lawn. My sister Bonnie was helping set up folding tables, though her hands still had that faint tremor whenever anyone said Clara's name out loud. And then there was Marcus Shaw, distant cousin, slicked back hair, wearing a $3,000 suit. Even at a family picnic, he'd made it big in corporate law down in Denver, and honestly, I never warmed to the man's calculating eyes. Something about him always felt like he was sizing you up for what you could give him, not who you were. Suddenly, Sam tugged hard on my shirt sleeve. "Dad, look, weird clouds are coming." He pointed west, where a line of bruised thunderheads was masking the Shadow Peak ridges. Wyoming weather is a cruel joke. It promises sunshine and delivers a blizzard an hour later. The forecast was clear, but Sam's notebook entry would later read, 3:45 p.m. wind change. Dark trucks arrived. Weird. He'd spotted the sleek black SUVs, no license plates, parking just beyond the property line. But before he could tell me, the world exploded. 15 miles away, the same vicious storm front hit a sleek black sedan hydroplaning on a Forest Service road. Inside, Morgan Thorne was rigid with fear, gripping a locked metal briefcase. Morgan, the elusive CEO of Ethel Pharmaceuticals, 34 years old, wearing a soaked, elegant red gown, a terrifying contrast to the wild, brutal landscape outside her window. She wasn't running from a bad quarter, she was running from her own empire. That briefcase held 3 years of compiled evidence, contracts, emails, ghost ledgers, and one watermarked letter that had haunted her dreams. It was the proof that a third-party supplier, approved by her father and his chief legal counsel, had manufactured counterfeit, deadly pain medications. Those pills had flooded rural pharmacies across the Mountain West. Pills that had killed people like my sister, Clara. Morgan had spent months secretly gathering everything, risking her life to hand it all to a federal prosecutor in Cheyenne. But someone had noticed her absence from the charity gala. Someone had made a very, very expensive phone call. The first bolt of lightning split the sky right over the lodge. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in 5 minutes. George shouted for everyone to grab the food and run for the main lodge. Then, the sound like 1,000 snapping bones as Morgan's sedan fishtailed onto the old wooden bridge that spanned Swift Creek. The bridge, already weakened by spring floods and ignored by county maintenance for years, just shuddered, and the center supports gave way. The car tilted, slid, and plunged into the swollen, murky creek below. I saw it. One moment, I was shoving Sam toward Bonnie. The next, I heard the crash and the splash.
Inside the lodge, I moved with the calm, brutal efficiency of a trauma medic, directing my stunned cousins like an emergency team. We got Morgan out of the red dress and into dry thermal layers. I monitored her temp, checked her pupils, listened to her lungs. "Call me Morgan," she rasped at one point, when I asked her name. "Okay, Morgan. You're doing fine. Just rest." Sam sat cross-legged in the corner, the heavy briefcase beside him, his notebook open to a fresh page. He sketched the Carter family crest carved above the fireplace, then added a smaller drawing of the woman's face, peaceful in sleep. His notes: 4:51 p.m. Dad saved her. Briefcase, heavy metal locks. George returned from the satellite phone, his expression grim. He pulled me aside. "Got through to the hospital, Ethan. But I caught a news bulletin on the AM band. Missing persons alert for Morgan Thorne, CEO of Ethel Pharmaceuticals. Left a gala in Jackson Hole, last seen heading east." I looked at the CEO sleeping fitfully on the couch. Then I looked at the briefcase. Then I looked at my son, who was watching everything with those quiet, intelligent eyes. "She's the CEO," I said slowly, the words heavy with 3 years of unresolved grief, "of the company that made the pills that killed Clara. What are you going to do?" George asked, his voice low. I thought about the Hippocratic oath I'd sworn as a medic, to protect life, to do no harm. I thought about Clara's last days, her desperate descent, her death. And I thought about Sam, watching me, learning what it meant to be a man of honor. "I'm going to keep her alive," I said quietly. "And then I'm going to find out why the CEO of the company that destroyed my family was running for her life." By dawn, the storm had passed, but the chaos had just begun. Satellite news vans lined the muddy road, a sheriff's deputy was asking polite questions, and the story was spreading. CEO rescued from river by local veteran. Morgan woke fully around 5 a.m. clear-eyed, stronger. She found me on the porch, drinking black coffee, watching the sunrise paint the Shadow Peak Mountains gold. She wore borrowed jeans and a flannel shirt that belonged to Bonnie. Without the armor of the red gown and corporate polish, she looked younger, vulnerable. "You know who I am," she stated, not asked. "I do now," I replied. "And you saved me anyway." "I'm a medic," I said, turning to face her. "It's what I do. But I want to know why you were running. And what is in that briefcase?" Morgan sat down, careful to maintain a professional distance. "I need to call a federal prosecutor. Someone I can trust. I have evidence. Evidence that my company, my father's company, has been distributing counterfeit, deadly medications through a third-party supplier. It has killed people. Dozens, maybe more." My jaw tightened. My sister, Clara Vance. 3 years ago. Respiratory failure after taking prescribed pain medication from the local pharmacy. Morgan closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. "I am so sorry. That's why I'm running. That's why I'm risking everything. Because people like your sister deserved better. And the people responsible need to face justice. Why should I trust you?" I challenged, the pain in my voice making the question sharper than I intended. "You're the CEO. You profited from this." She reached into the pocket of the borrowed jeans and pulled out a folded, water-stained paper, an email she'd kept as insurance. She handed it to me. "This is correspondence between my father's chief counsel, Marcus Shaw, and the supplier. It proves they knew. They knew the medications were substandard, and they buried the safety reports." I read it. My hand shook. Marcus Shaw. My cousin Marcus. I found this 6 months ago. That night, Pike and his team made their move. The lodge lights went out all at once, a cut wire, not a blown fuse. Rocks clattered against the windows, a diversion. I'd anticipated this. I gathered the family into the main room, set George at the front door with a shotgun and a phone, and led Morgan and Sam out the back toward my old truck. We made it halfway across the clearing when figures emerged from the tree line. The briefcase, Vance. "Hand it over, and everyone goes home safe." Victor Pike's voice cut through the dark. I had the briefcase in one hand, my other arm tied around Sam. Morgan stood close, her breath visible in the cold mountain air. "You're trespassing," I called back, "and threatening a child. Sheriff's already on his way. You want to add kidnapping to your charges." A powerful flashlight beam cut across us. Pike stepped forward, flanked by 2 men in tactical vests. "Last chance." My response was calculated and immediate. I pressed a button on the old military radio clipped to my belt, a frequency Otis was monitoring. Then I dropped low and moved. Years of hand-to-hand combat training, dusty but not forgotten, took over. I shoved Sam toward Morgan, executed a rapid leg sweep that took the nearest man out, and used a vicious wrist lock to disarm the second. Pike lunged for the briefcase, but I drove an elbow into his solar plexus, folding the man in half. Sirens wailed in the distance, closer this time. Pike staggered back, gasping. "This isn't over. That briefcase belongs to us." "No," Morgan said, stepping forward, her fear replaced by a cold fire. "It belongs to the families your company destroyed. And you're going to answer for it." Pike retreated into the darkness. By the time Otis arrived, the security team was gone, but the message was clear. They'd be back, and they were escalating. Otis took one look at the situation and made a decision. "Carter property isn't safe. I've got a cabin up in the high country, old Forest Service lease. No one knows about it except me and a few hunting buddies. You three should disappear up there until we can coordinate with the feds." We hiked through the night, the rain starting again, cold and relentless. Sam stayed close to me, and the briefcase, that terrible, beautiful burden, was now secured in Morgan's hands. We reached the cabin as dawn broke, a rough, hewn structure with a stone fireplace and no electricity. I got a fire going while Morgan made coffee on the camp stove. Sam spread his notebook on the table, showing Morgan his sketches and observations. "You're very good at details, Sam," she said gently. "Dad says details matter," Sam replied. "He says lives get saved or lost because of details." Morgan looked at me, understanding everything. "Your dad's right." As the cabin warmed, the three of us sat around the fire. Morgan finally opened the briefcase, spreading documents across the floor, the blueprints of a criminal enterprise. She explained the supply chain, the cost-cutting, how Marcus Shaw had knowingly buried safety reports. Then she pulled out a water-stained envelope. "I found a letter," Morgan said quietly. "I wrote it 3 years ago to a woman named Clara Vance. I was trying to investigate complaints about our medications. My father intercepted it. I found it in his desk last month." I took the letter with shaking hands. Clara's name was on the envelope. The postmark was dated 2 weeks before she died. Inside, Morgan's handwriting was careful and compassionate. "I'm so sorry for what you're going through. I promise I will find the truth. You deserve justice." "She never got this," I whispered, the rage and sorrow a physical ache in my chest. "I know," Morgan said, tears tracking down her cheeks. "I was too late. I wasn't strong enough then. But I'm going to make it right, even if it costs me everything." Sam looked between us, his small voice cutting through the tension. "Are you and Dad going to be friends now?" Morgan smiled, the tears still falling. "I hope so, Sam. I really hope so." I made a decision then and there. We were no longer hiding. We are going to Helena. We are going to deliver this briefcase to the prosecutor, all of us together, and we are going to see this through. Together, Morgan confirmed. The journey to Helena took 2 tense days, moving cautiously through back roads, always monitoring the old military radio. Pike and his team were closing in. Marcus Shaw had filed an emergency injunction claiming Morgan was mentally unfit and had stolen corporate property. We reached the outskirts of Helena on a grey morning. Morgan had arranged to meet Serena Wilkins, the federal prosecutor, at the county courthouse, hoping the media presence would provide protection. But as we pulled into the parking lot, we saw a wall of reporters, security, and right in the middle, Marcus Shaw, flanked by corporate attorneys. "It's a trap," I muttered. "It's our only shot," Morgan replied. She looked at Sam. "Sweetheart, I need you to be very brave. Can you do that?" Sam nodded, clutching his notebook. We stepped out of the truck. The camera flashes exploded around us. Marcus pushed forward, holding up a legal document. "Morgan Thorne is under court order to return company property. Anyone aiding her is subject to arrest." Morgan raised her voice, cutting through the chaos. Then, a new voice cut through the noise. "That won't be necessary." Serena Wilkins stepped forward, flanked by 2 FBI agents. She was silver-haired, radiating quiet authority. "I am Assistant U.S. Attorney Serena Wilkins, and I'm here to inform the court that the federal government has been conducting its own investigation into Ethel Pharmaceuticals for the past 6 months." Marcus paled. That's impossible. Not impossible, Serena said calmly. A concerned citizen established a dead man's switch 3 years ago. Clara Vance, before she died, encrypted copies of her medical records and correspondence with Ethel. She sent them to be released to my office if she didn't check in every 30 days. The data arrived 5 months ago. We've been building a case ever since. The briefcase Miss Thorne is holding contains the final pieces. My knees almost buckled. Clara. My sister had been smarter, stronger than I ever knew. She had protected us from beyond the grave. Morgan stepped forward and handed the briefcase to Serena. Everything you need is in here. Contracts, ledgers, emails, and this. She pulled out the water-stained letter she'd written to Clara. I was too late. But I'm not too late for everyone else. Serena took the letter. The FBI agents began photographing the briefcase contents. William Thorne and Marcus Shaw, you're both under federal arrest for conspiracy to distribute adulterated pharmaceuticals, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. Victor Pike tried to melt into the crowd, but I spotted him instantly. That's the man who tried to kill us to get that briefcase back. I yelled. Otis and 2 deputies were on Pike in seconds, bringing him down with cold, professional efficiency. The trial took 8 months. William Thorne and Marcus Shaw both faced severe federal charges. Morgan resigned as CEO, but stayed on as a cooperating witness, providing devastating, unflinching testimony. Ethel Pharmaceuticals was restructured, and Morgan, using her personal assets, created the Clara Vance Community Health Fund to provide free addiction treatment and emergency care across rural Wyoming. I returned to my life, but I wasn't the same. I enrolled in an advanced paramedic certification program, determined to give my community the emergency care Clara should have had. Sam received a scholarship from the new fund. And Morgan stayed. Not in the corporate towers, but in Wyoming. She rented a small house near the Vance estate and spent her days working for the fund, listening to families, trying to heal the wounds she had unwittingly inherited. One evening, she joined us for dinner. It was awkward at first, but slowly, that heavy atmosphere softened. Morgan taught Sam how to play chess, explaining strategy in terms that reminded me of military tactics. She laughed at George's terrible jokes. She listened to Bonnie talk about Clara without flinching. You didn't have to stay, I said as I walked her to her car. The sun was setting over the lake. I know, she replied. But I wanted to. This is where the work matters. She paused, her green eyes looking right into mine. And this is where you are. I looked at her, really looked. Not as the CEO who represented my pain, but as the woman who'd risked everything to make it right. Do you think Clara would forgive me? She asked softly. I think, I said slowly, she'd thank you for finishing what she started. For caring enough to burn it all down. A year later, on a bright autumn day, the Clara Vance Community Health Wing opened at the county hospital. Morgan stood at the podium, addressing the crowd. 3 years ago, my company failed you. It failed Clara Vance. I can't undo that, but I promise that the rest of my life will be spent trying to earn back that trust. I sat in the front row with Sam, who still carried his notebook, now filled with trauma surgeon diagrams. Morgan found me by the memorial garden after the ceremony. I keep waiting for someone to tell me I haven't done enough, she admitted. You've done more than enough, I replied. You gave people their lives back. We did, Morgan corrected, her voice gentle. You could have let me drown. You chose to believe I could change. That mattered. I took her hand, a gesture that had become familiar over months of shared dinners and quiet walks. You kept your promise to Clara. You made sure her death meant something. We walked together toward the lake, Sam running ahead to skip stones across the water. The Montana sky stretched endless overhead, full of possibility. The briefcase that had started it all now sat in federal evidence lockup, its contents having brought down an empire and built something better in its place. We were no longer victims and perpetrators, no longer divided by tragedy. We were simply 3 people who'd found each other in the darkest moment and chosen to create light. And that, in the end, was justice. Here's the deep question I want you to wrestle with. If Morgan Thorne hadn't risked her life to run, and if Ethan Vance hadn't chosen to save her despite his sister's death, would justice ever have been served? Does true redemption require the powerful to risk everything, or is simply cooperating with authorities enough? And what about Marcus Shaw, The cousin who betrayed his family for corporate power. Tell me your take in the comments. Is the ending too neat? Or is it exactly the justice those families deserved? Hit that like button and subscribe if you believe one heroic choice can truly bring down an entire corporate empire. Let's hear your voice.